World leaders at the climate summit in Glasgow have agreed to a deal slashing emissions of methane, a major greenhouse gas. 80 countries signed up to the deal aimed at reducing methane output by 30% by 2030. Earlier, there was an agreement to end deforestation by 2030. Around 100 countries signed up to that pledge, including Brazil, Russia and Indonesia. It will cover 85% of the world's forests. There have been two powerful explosions in the Afghan capital, Kabul. 22 people have reportedly been killed. Taliban spokesman confirmed that the first blast was in front of the military hospital in the city. And former FIFA President Sepp Blatter and former UEFA President Michel Platini have been charged with fraud by Swiss prosecutors.
On the U.S. East Coast, heavy rains and flooding are blamed for at least 26 deaths in states from Maryland to New York. The U.S. Supreme Court permits a Texas law that bans abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy to stay in force. In El Salvador, people demonstrate against a law that makes the electronic money Bitcoin legal for all goods and services in the country. And in Nigeria, local health officials provide the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine to rural areas to persuade more people to get vaccinated.
Now we start with the United Nations Climate Conference in Scotland. Japan's Prime Minister Kishida Fumio has set out his country's plan to cut its emissions by 2030. He also vows to spend big in the push to help other nations follow suit.
2050年カーボンニュートラル
Japan aims to achieve carbon neutrality in 2050. And to do that, the government plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 46% in 2030 from the level in fiscal 2013. If possible, we will even push for a reduction of 50%.
Kishida pledged up to $10 billion over the next 5 years to help developing nations achieve net zero emissions, especially in Asia, which he described as the engine of economic growth. He also said Japan will launch a $100 million project to promote the shift from fossil fuels to renewable energies. Kishida expressed determination to lead the world toward a carbon-free society. Now, Indonesian President Joko Widodo met with his U.S. counterpart Joe Biden on the sidelines of COP26. They agreed to build closer ties based on the shared dedication of their countries to democracy.
We can further strengthen our cooperation. I appreciate President Biden's leadership in various global issues, climate change, green energy, COVID-19, and democracy.
From addressing the climate crisis to ending the COVID-19 pandemic to upholding freedom of the seas. There's no global challenge today that doesn't benefit from Indonesia and the United States working together.
The White House said the leaders exchanged views on maritime security and the importance of freedom of navigation, apparently to counter China's maritime activities. Joko also thanked Biden for supporting Indonesia in chairing the G20 for 1 year starting next month. The country plans to hold a summit on the island of Bali, which has been hit hard by the coronavirus pandemic. Indonesia is the only G20 member in Southeast Asia and will be chairing it for the first time. Joko said Indonesia must make the summit relevant not only for G20 members, but also for the world, especially developing countries. Turning to Japanese politics, the leader of the largest opposition party says he's stepping down. Edano Yukio's Constitutional Democratic Party came out of Sunday's lower house election with 13 fewer seats.
I've decided that we have to establish a new direction under a new leader as we prepare for next year's upper house election and the next election to choose the government.
Edano made the announcement Tuesday at a meeting of party executives. The 57-year-old is a veteran politician. He's known for being the voice of the government during the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster. A party Edano launched 4 years ago served as the foundation for the one he heads now. In September last year, the party merged with others to form a major opposition force. In Sunday's vote, the Constitutional Democratic Party collaborated with opposition parties, including the Japanese Communist Party, but only garnered 96 seats. Critics say this cooperative relationship is what caused the party to lose support. Edano's resignation will take effect after a special diet session convenes on November 10th. Moving to the latest on the knife and arson attack inside a Tokyo train on Sunday evening. Police say the suspect was found to have been carrying several bottles of flammable liquids. The attack occurred on the Keio line. 24-year-old Hattori Kyota is alleged to have first stabbed and seriously wounded a 72-year-old male passenger. He then allegedly poured out lighter fluid in another carriage before setting it on fire. 16 passengers were injured after they inhaled smoke from the flames. Hattori is being held on suspicion of attempted murder and arson. Now, sources close to the police believe the suspect was carrying about 4 liters of lighter fluid. They say police also found 5 lighters and flammable insecticide spray among the suspect's belongings. Hattori is from the city of Fukuoka in southwestern Japan. He stayed at a hotel in Tokyo for about a month before the attack. The suspect is alleged to have bought the knife and lighter fluid while staying at the hotel. There's been a series of similar attacks in the capital in recent months. In August, a man with a knife went on a rampage on the Odakyu line, leaving 10 people injured. Last month, 2 people were stabbed at Ueno Station. Police and railway companies have stepped up security. Police conducted a drill at Tokyo's Shinjuku station on Tuesday, simulating the apprehension of assailants armed with knives. In Fukuoka City, police began patrolling a subway station.
I believe passengers have to take action for themselves, such as changing carriages or getting off a train when they sense danger.
The Transport Ministry held an emergency meeting of safety management officials from railway companies. The ministry called on the officials to review their measures to prevent a recurrence of such incidents and report the outcome to the Bureau. Staying with Japan, where the fisheries minister has pledged swift support for communities that have been swamped by massive amounts of pumice stones. The stones are coming from an undersea volcano in the Pacific Ocean that became active in August. As of Tuesday morning, a total of 27 fishing ports in the southern prefectures of Okinawa and Kagoshima had confirmed the arrival of drifting pumice stones. 6 of them say the amount of stones is so huge it's hampering fishing operations. Efforts to remove the stones have gotten underway. At a resort hotel in Onna village in Okinawa, heavy machinery has been brought in to remove the stones. The pumice started drifting ashore 2 weeks ago and now measure about 20 centimeters in depth. Hotel officials say guests are no longer able to use the pier nor engage in marine sports such as boating or diving.
The amount of pumice stones has been increasing by the day. At first, the staff worked hard to collect the stones, but there's a limit to what they can do.
The fisheries agency is stepping in to help. It's announced it'll subsidize 80% of the cost of removing the stones.
We have received reports of boat engine troubles and fish dying. We will continue to make efforts to remove the pumice and support the communities.
Officials are working with local governments to assess the damage to fishing boats and the fishery industry. Schools in the Indian capital, New Delhi, are ending a long break after being shut for more than 19 months due to the pandemic. Students went back to school on Monday after attending only online classes since March last year. Some parents voiced concerns, saying they did not want to send their kids back yet. But the country's health and educational authorities say they've prepared strict rules to keep the schools functioning safely.
We were not able to meet our friends or teachers during online classes. That's why we feel so good to be back at school.
Life has been slowly returning to normal in India after the nation weathered a devastating second wave of infections earlier this year. New daily infections have now fallen below 20,000 on some days after a peak of more than 400,000 in May. Some are concerned about a possible surge in cases with the Hindu festival season this month. Last spring, India saw a steep rise during and after another festival season. Now to Australia, where local governments are allowing the quarantine-free entry of fully vaccinated people from overseas for the first time since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. The measure took effect Monday in the states of New South Wales and Victoria, as well as in the capital, Canberra. It applies to Australian citizens and foreigners who have official travel exemptions. At Sydney Airport, people returning from overseas were delighted to see their families.
It feels awesome. You know, we've missed the family. It's been difficult, so it feels really good. Really good.
But there was some confusion for foreigners who were unaware of the quarantine being lifted.
I was surprised to hear that foreigners are no longer quarantined. I will look for a hotel where I can stay by myself.
New cases have dropped to less than 200 a day in New South Wales, where Sydney is located. 80% of the people in the state aged 16 and over have been fully vaccinated. The government says a full resumption of accepting overseas tourists is not far away. In other news, nature experts here in Japan are sounding the alarm about an invasive bug. They've discovered an exotic longhorn beetle in the country for the first time. It's notorious for damaging trees and is already living up to its reputation. The insect's name is Apriona swainsoni. It's native to China and surrounding areas. And it's in Japan's northeast now, too. A local tree doctor made the discovery in July. She says it's damaged 52 out of 54 trees along a road in Koriyama, Fukushima Prefecture. Makia amurensis are widely planted across the nation. Kagaya Etsuko is an expert on longhorn beetles at the Forestry and Forest Products Research Institute. She says the species newly discovered in Japan must be eradicated urgently. Now, another invasive creature is becoming a problem at Japan's biggest airport. NHK has learned a foreign species of turtle is posing a safety issue for planes taking off at Narita Airport near Tokyo. One of its 2 runways had to be temporarily shut down in September when a large turtle was spotted trudging along it. Airport officials believe the turtle was a red-eared slider, a non-native species with a high reproductive rate, and sightings are now on the rise. Officials believe the turtle came from a nearby reservoir for rainwater. NHK was able to visit the area and spotted a number of turtles. There's no barrier separating this spot from the runway.
Turtles have hard shells, so they could be more dangerous for aircraft engines than bird strikes if they are inhaled into an engine during takeoff.
The aviation experts said measures need to be taken as soon as possible to keep the turtles off the runways. Well, Wednesday is a national holiday here in Japan. Our meteorologist Jonathan Oh explains the forecast for here and elsewhere in our World Weather Report.
Hello, looks like we're going to be dealing with a pretty nice day for most of Japan coming up on Wednesday when it comes to the national holiday. Though we're still talking about some wet weather up toward the north. We've been seeing some of the heavier rainfall impacting places like Hokkaido as we went through Tuesday. But going to Wednesday, the low pressure systems are going to still be in the area, and so that's going to help usher in some of the cloudier and wetter weather for the northern areas of Japan and also the Sea of Japan side of the country, so we'll be on the lookout for that, like Niigata looking at some rain with a high of 18. But look at this, 22 in Tokyo, 21 in Osaka, looking at 20 for the high in Fukuoka with relatively dry weather coming up on Wednesday. Broadening out the view, high pressure back toward the west. That's keeping these relatively calm in places like Shanghai with a high of 22, 17 in Beijing, and also this whole sunny skies expected there as well, as the high pressure really keeps things under control as you go through the day. Across the Pacific into the western areas of the United States, we have this massive cold front with more rain and eventually some snow possible into the higher elevations as we see this system pushing toward the east. Eventually the low will be diving down toward the south. We do have some of this northwesterly flow across the Great Lakes, so that's going to lead to lake effect snow concerns for Tuesday. By the time we go to Wednesday, that may be easing as that cold front pushes off toward the east. But we'll have some cold air wrapping back around down toward the south. Look at this. Atlanta only 14 on Wednesday with cloudy skies expected, only 9 in Oklahoma City with some rain. Across the Atlantic into Europe we go. We have this low pressure system near the Scandinavian peninsula with all this moisture really surging in from the south, and we're going to be talking about some unstable weather for the northern and western portions of Europe as we go throughout the day, Tuesday into Wednesday. Rain to pairs with thunderstorms into Vienna. Stockholm a high of only 9 as we go through the day. Hope you have a good day wherever you are.